Hello, this is Andrew again. My next homework assignment is to create a relative frequency distribution. So in this problem, I have 10 scores in the distribution. I'll use the tool for statistics problems that I found online called cram101.com that beats Excel and a lot easier to use. So let's go to Cram, and this is the menu. So we'll scroll down here and get to relative frequency distribution. And the first thing we need to do is to indicate how many data points we're going to have in our distribution. My homework example has 10, so we'll select 10. And then the next thing we need to do is to enter the data. CRAM does allow you to use random data or fixed data, which is an example that they have prepared to help teach this. We'll just go ahead and enter our homework example here. So the first noun is 17. Then we have 3, 92, 95, 35, 53, 23, 45, 78, and 39. Okay, once we've entered the data, the next step to do is to order the data numerically. So clicking on that, it will go up in our table and then sort the data from lowest value to highest value. So the next thing we need to do then is determine the number of intervals that we want. The number of intervals basically says how many classes we're going to have in this data. Typically what you like to do is reduce the amount of information so that you can get a better picture of how things are grouped. So we'll select the number of intervals, and this is fully arbitrary. It all depends on where you can get the most information, where you can explain your data. So clicking on the number of intervals, I've chosen 5. The upper limit of our distribution is 95 right here, and the lower limit of the distribution, the value is 3. So the range is 95 minus 3, or 92. We've selected 5 intervals, so we take 5 into 92. That gets us approximately 19 rounded up. That's why we get to 19. So the next step is, after we have our classes and our intervals, these are the 5 intervals that we've chosen, is to populate those. Now you notice each interval is basically has a 0.5 after it. So the very first value that we had in our distribution, if you recall, was 3. So 3 would be our lower limit. Since we need mutually exclusive categories, we take 3 and subtract 0.5 from it to get to 2.5, and then in the upper level it would have been 22, so we subtract that to get to 21.5. So I mean, the idea here is that everything has to be able to fall into one bucket. So the next step to do in a relative frequency distribution is get the frequency. So we go back to our data up here as we've sorted it, and then we go through the values, and then for each value we basically count the number of them that will fit in a class. So the number of values that would fit, click frequency, we would have 2 values that would fit in the first interval, 2.5 to 21.5, 3 in the second, and so forth. So we go through the entire list, and first of all, create the frequencies. Relative frequency basically says how many items do we have in this particular interval relative to the whole distribution. So we have 10 data points in total. 2 of them fall in the first interval. So we have 0.2 as a relative frequency for the first interval, or roughly 20%. And in the second interval, 0.3, or we could say 30%. So this gets us our relative frequency table. The next step that I like to do is to plot this out. So we'll create a histogram, which is fairly easy to do on the Cram 101 tool. And you can see our data is pretty flat, not a lot of excitement going on. The biggest opportunity apparently is in the second interval. And if you recall, 30% of the data falls in that particular interval. If you like, you can use this tool and create a polygon if that's more meaningful. I happen to like histograms. That's how you create a relative frequency distribution. Thank you.